500 million people installed Pokémon Go within 60 days of its launch. At its peak, 143 million people were walking around parks, sidewalks, and parking lots, pointing their phones at buildings and statues, trying to catch digital creatures layered on top of the real world. That was 2016. It's 2026 now, and Niantic just revealed what all of that was actually worth. Recently, Niantic Spatial, the AI company Niantic spun off after selling Pokémon Go, announced a partnership with Coco Robotics, a startup that runs delivery robots in cities across the US and Europe. Those robots are now navigating sidewalks using a visual positioning system trained on 30 billion images. 30 billion! And those images came from you. Those images came from your phone while you were catching Pokemon. Players thought the only thing at stake was a shiny Charizard at the local gym, but these players were actually building one of the largest real-world visual datasets in history, and nobody told them. So let's talk about what Niantic actually built, because the technology is genuinely impressive, even if the ethics are questionable. Niantic's visual positioning system can pinpoint your location on a map to within a few centimeters, not using GPS, but by looking at photos of nearby buildings and landmarks. You feed it a handful of pictures of your surroundings, and it tells you exactly where you are on Earth, down to the centimeter. And the way they got there is kind of brilliant. Pokémon Go placed Pokéstops and gyms at real-world landmarks, things like churches, murals, public sculptures, storefronts. That meant millions of players were constantly pointing their phone cameras at these specific locations. Every photo came tagged with rich metadata, exact GPS coordinates, camera angle, phone orientation, movement speed and direction, time of day, weather conditions, and more. But it goes further than that. Niantic introduced augmented reality, or AR, scan tasks. These are missions that rewarded players for scanning real-world locations to create 3D models. By 2024, they were collecting up to 1 million new scans per week. Players did this because they got in-game rewards. Niantic did this because each scan was a data point in a massive spatial model. And here's what makes this dataset so uniquely powerful. The same locations were photographed by thousands of different users from different angles at different times of day in every weather condition. Google Street View sends a car down your road once every few years with a roof-mounted camera at a fixed height. Pokémon Go had millions of people capturing pedestrian-level imagery of sidewalks, building entrances, park paths, and alleyways, all places that mapping vehicles literally can't reach. And they did it continuously for 8 years. Brian McClendon, the CTO of Niantic Spatial, said it plainly, quote, "We know where you're standing within several centimeters of accuracy, and most importantly, where you're looking." That's not creepy to say at all. No mapping company with a fleet of vehicles could have replicated this on the same timeline or budget at this scale. Niantic got it for free. Actually, they got paid for it. Players were buying Pokeballs while generating the training data through in-app purchases. Now here's where it gets more complicated. Let's talk about who actually owns all of this data, because it's kind of a mess. In March 2025, Niantic sold its entire games division, which included Pokémon Go, Pikmin Bloom, and Monster Hunter Now, to Scopely for $3.5 billion. And Scopely is owned by the Savvy Games Group, which is the Saudi Royal Investment Fund's gaming arm. So Pokémon Go, the game that is still collecting scan data from players right now, is now owned by Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, Niantic kept the Spatial AI business and the Ingress game, rebranding the enterprise side as Niantic Spatial. So the AI model trained on 8 years of historical Pokémon Go data belongs to Niantic Spatial. And the delivery robots using that model belong to Coco Robotics. 3 different enterprises, 3 different countries, 1 dataset, built by people who thought they were playing a game. And Niantic's privacy policy? It covers all of this. Their terms of service grant broad rights to use submitted data and pass those rights to other companies. The AR scan feature was technically voluntary, nobody forced you to scan that statue, but it was gamified with in-game rewards, embedded in the normal flow of gameplay and presented as a fun feature, not a data contribution to a commercial geospatial product. The privacy policy itself doesn't exhaustively list what data is collected or all the purposes it's used for. It uses language like, quote, legitimate business objectives, which legally covers just about anything. And the uploaded AR imagery is reportedly anonymized during processing, but that almost doesn't matter. The valuable asset isn't your identity, it is, but it's the location data, the centimeter accurate, weather tagged, angle diverse, metadata rich location data. Now, let's zoom into the technical side for a minute, because I think this is where it gets really interesting if you're a developer. What Niantic Spatial is building is what they call a large geospatial model. Think of it as the spatial equivalent of a large language model. Instead of predicting the next word in a sequence, it predicts your location from visual input. You show it a photo of a building, and it tells you where in the world that building is with alarming accuracy. The reason this works is because of how the training data was collected. Traditional mapping datasets give you one image per location, taken from a fixed height at one time. Pokémon Go's dataset gives you thousands of images per location, taken from every conceivable angle across every lighting and weather condition over the span of 8 years. That's the kind of diversity that makes machine learning models robust. A model trained on this data doesn't just recognize a building on a sunny afternoon, it recognizes it at dusk, in rain partially obscured by temporary structures, from across the street, from the entrance, from anywhere. And the applications extend way beyond delivery robots. AR glasses need this kind of positioning to overlay digital content on the physical world. Autonomous vehicles need it for navigation in urban areas where GPS bounces off buildings. Construction companies need it for site mapping. Urban planners need it for infrastructure modeling. And if you're thinking this sounds a lot like something that would be very useful for surveillance, you're not wrong. Popular Science flagged exactly this in their coverage. A system that can identify your precise location from a single photograph of your surroundings has obvious appeal to law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Niantic hasn't suggested any plans to provide this data to authorities, but the capability exists, and the precedent for government access to commercial data products is well established. This also isn't the first time we've seen this pattern. Google's reCAPTCHA had you clicking on traffic lights and crosswalks to prove you were human. What it was actually doing was training computer vision models for self-driving cars. You were doing free labor for Waymo every time you identified a bicycle in a grid of photos. Same playbook, useful task for the user, but the real purpose is dataset generation. Niantic just ran it for 8 years, at a scale of 30 billion images, across 143 million people at its peak. And this is the part that should actually make you uncomfortable. Not the technology, because that's kind of impressive. The consent model. When players opted into AR scans, they were presented with a game feature. Scan this statue, get some items. Nobody was presented with, quote, your scan data will train a commercial AI product that will be licensed to robotics companies to navigate delivery robots on public sidewalks, built on a platform now partially owned by a Saudi sovereign wealth fund. The purpose changed, but the consent didn't. And this matters because of the precedent it sets. Every app on your phone with camera and GPS access is sitting on the same potential goldmine. Your fitness apps knows your running routes. Your photo app has geotagged images of every place you've ever been. Your messaging app also has your location history. We've already seen what happens when this data leaks or gets repurposed. In 2018, Strava's heat map accidentally revealed the locations of secret military bases because soldiers were tracking their runs. The US Marine Corps had to issue guidance to Marines who played Pokémon Go about the same security implications. Can you imagine that conversation? The question isn't whether other companies will do what Niantic did. I can almost guarantee that other companies are doing this today. No one person can scroll through all the terms of service that they blindly accept, so it's easy for things like this to slip by. This is especially true because legal departments write the terms of service in legalese, making it nearly impossible for the everyday person to understand it. That means the question is actually, will they tell you when they do what Niantic did? Because stuff like this works. Gamify the data collection, bury the terms in a privacy policy nobody reads, and by the time anyone notices, you've got 30 billion images and a $3.5 billion exit. The most valuable AI training datasets in the world aren't being assembled in data centers. They're being built by people who have no idea they're building them. But tell me what you think. Did you play Pokémon Go? Did you do the AR scans? Let me know in the comments if this changes how you think about it. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.